This is you. There's your father. His father. Then thousands of frightened people before them, stretching backward through history, surviving long enough to keep the bloodline moving one more generation. Keep going, past apartment buildings, past highways, past electricity and antibiotics, and grocery stores filled with food you didn't have to fight for. Further back. Now you're standing in a medieval city in the year 1348. The streets are wet with mud, animal waste, and things people stopped cleaning weeks ago. Smoke hangs low between buildings because ventilation barely exists. Church bells keep ringing somewhere in the distance, not for celebration, for death. And the uncomfortable truth is that most people alive today would not survive a single week here. Not because the plague kills instantly, because your body and nervous system were never designed for this much sustained fear, hunger, exhaustion, and uncertainty at the same time. Most people would break before day 4. So let's see how long you last during the Black Death. Day 7. Rumors. At first, it doesn't feel real. You hear stories from nearby towns, entire households getting sick, merchants disappearing, priests dying after visiting infected homes. People explain it in different ways because nobody understands bacteria yet. Bad air, divine punishment, foreign poison. One man insists the planets are misaligned. Another claims garlic prevents infection because medieval medicine was basically eat something aggressive and hope for the best. Life still continues for now. Markets remain open, children still run through narrow streets. Bakers still sell bread beside open drains carrying human waste downhill through the city. But something has changed. People speak more quietly. You notice more coughing, more smoke from fires burning herbs indoors. Then the bells begin ringing more often. One funeral, then another, then 3 before sunset. And once fear enters the nervous system, the body starts changing immediately. Your sleep becomes lighter. Small sounds wake you up. Every headache feels suspicious. Every warm feeling in your chest suddenly matters. This is where survival starts, not with infection, with stress. Day 6. Nobody leaves the house. A week ago, the streets were crowded. Now shutters stay closed. People only leave home when absolutely necessary. Doors open slightly for conversations, then shut again almost immediately. You stop seeing neighbors regularly. The silence changes the city first. No music, fewer carts, fewer arguments, just coughing somewhere behind walls. The smell gets worse too. Rotting waste, damp wood, smoke trapped between buildings. Human bodies living too close together without enough clean water. And your house isn't safe either. Entire families sleep in the same room. Air barely moves. Everyone breathes the same smoke through the night, while rats move inside the walls looking for scraps. You wake up with headaches constantly because indoor fires consume oxygen and fill the room with smoke particles. Your throat burns every morning. Then someone nearby starts coughing blood. Nobody mentions it directly. They just stop visiting that house. This is usually where people raised in comfort begin mentally deteriorating. Because isolation sounds manageable until you realize your brain never fully relaxes. Your body stays alert every hour of the day, waiting for danger you cannot see. And invisible danger exhausts people faster than visible danger. Day 5. Food runs out. Now survival becomes physical. Supply routes slow down because merchants avoid infected cities. Markets shrink. Bread becomes more expensive. Fresh food disappears first. You start eating smaller portions without admitting it out loud. Then smaller again. Hunger changes how people behave surprisingly fast. Patience disappears. Trust disappears. Kindness becomes expensive. A man accuses his neighbor of spreading disease after sharing a well for 10 years. Another family locks their doors and refuses to help anyone outside, including relatives. Nobody wants contact anymore. Not hands, not breath, not proximity. And because sanitation barely exists, avoiding contamination becomes almost impossible anyway. The streets stay wet with waste. Water sources become questionable. Rats move freely through storage areas and kitchens, while fleas spread between humans faster than anyone realizes. Your body is weakening now too. Less food means less energy. Less sleep means slower recovery. Constant stress suppresses immune function. You feel cold more often. Your hands shake slightly while carrying water. And the strange part is that people continue trying to act normal. Someone still opens a bakery every morning. Someone still sharpens knives. Someone still argues over money as if the city isn't collapsing around them. Human beings cling to routine long after routine stops making sense. Day 4. First symptoms. This is where most people break. Not when they hear about the plague, not when they see bodies, when someone close to them gets sick. Your friend complains about feeling cold despite sweating through his clothes. By evening, he cannot stand properly. The next morning, you notice the swelling beneath his arm. Large, dark, painful. Now the fear becomes personal. Because the body reacts differently once danger has a face attached to it. Your pulse stays elevated constantly. You stop sleeping deeply. Every sensation inside your own body suddenly feels threatening. Then your friend starts vomiting. The smell in the room changes quickly after that. Sour sweat. Infection. Human sickness trapped indoors with no airflow. Doctors arrive wearing layered robes and carrying herbs meant to clean the air. One suggests bloodletting. Another recommends prayer. To be fair, confidence was doing most of the heavy lifting in medieval medicine. Nothing helps. By nightfall, the fever worsens. Your friend's breathing becomes uneven. He keeps asking for water, then becomes too weak to hold the cup properly. And this is where historical survival becomes difficult for modern people to imagine. There is no emergency room coming, no antibiotics, no understanding of bacteria, just helplessness stretched over hours while someone deteriorates in front of you. Day 3. Fever and dehydration. Now you're sick too. It begins with exhaustion, then fever, then pain moving through your joints and spine like your body is slowly tightening from the inside. You cannot get comfortable anymore. Your clothes stick to your skin from sweat. Your lips crack from dehydration. Even drinking water feels exhausting because standing drains energy too quickly. Then the swellings appear. Hard, hot, deep beneath the skin. By now, your thoughts are slowing down. Fever changes time strangely. Minutes blur together. You fall asleep without meaning to, then wake confused and drenched in sweat. Your body smells different now too. Sharp, acidic, sick. And outside, the city keeps deteriorating. Fewer market stalls open each morning. More houses stay silent. Carts carrying bodies move before sunrise because people prefer not to watch during daylight. Church bells ring constantly now. At some point, your brain stops reacting every time you hear them. That's usually a bad sign psychologically. Humans adapt to horror faster than they should. Day 2. Mental collapse. At this stage, the plague is no longer just killing bodies, it's destroying certainty. People pray constantly at first, then less, then not at all. Because repeated fear without relief changes the brain. You stop planning for the future. Small tasks become difficult. Conversations feel exhausting. Some people isolate themselves completely. Others wander the streets half delirious because being alone with their thoughts feels worse. You barely sleep now. Fever keeps pulling you awake. When you close your eyes, you hear coughing, bells, prayers, crying somewhere nearby. The city smells like smoke and death all the time. And psychologically, this may be the hardest part. Nobody knows when it ends. Modern people are used to systems functioning eventually. Hospitals recover, supply chains restart, information arrives quickly. Now imagine living inside a disaster where nobody understands the cause, nobody knows the timeline, and survival appears almost random. After enough days of fear and sleep deprivation, the nervous system begins failing. People stop thinking clearly, stop eating properly, stop trusting reality itself. This is usually where the mind gives out before the body does. Day 1. Your body is shutting down. Now breathing feels heavy. Your body is conserving energy because it no longer has enough resources to maintain normal function. Standing becomes difficult. Walking becomes expensive. Even speaking for too long leaves you exhausted. The fever has burned through most of your strength. Your heartbeat feels strange now, too fast sometimes, too slow others. The swellings darken beneath the skin. Your hands tremble constantly. You drift in and out of sleep without noticing. And eventually, the panic fades. Not because things improve, because your body no longer has enough energy to sustain fear continuously. That's the frightening thing about severe illness. At some point, exhaustion replaces terror. Outside, the bells continue ringing for people you'll never meet. Somewhere in the city, another cart moves quietly through the streets before dawn. And despite all of this, despite the fear, the starvation, the fever, the bodies, the collapse of entire cities, enough people survived. Somebody in your bloodline endured this long enough to have children in a world that barely felt survivable anymore. That's why you exist. Not because history was kind, because humans kept adapting to conditions that should have destroyed them. Civilization made life safer. It also made most of us softer. Humanity survived the Black Death. Individually, most people today probably don't. Subscribe if you think you make it past day 4.